So, tell us your name and where you from.
I'm Anthony Taylor. Born in Akron, Ohio. Uh, Went to school out there, played football for a school called Bookto High School off of Copley Road. And it was over there in West Akron, Ohio. It was fun. We used to play street football all the time. And then I lived out there with my parents and my mother and my brothers and sisters. And then we came to California for the year of 1986. We came to California. And that's when I was just, not knowing what to expect. And I ran into the hustle game out there. I saw a lot of things I never saw young men having at that time, which was a lot of things from hustling, which was nice cars. And so that's what got me into the hustle game in 1986 in Oakland, California. And I stayed over there by like in the 80s at the time, and just was out there, young man, just seeing a lot of money at the time. So I was hanging around a lot of different people in the game, and it led to a crime that had me doing 28 years to life. I did 28 years on a life without the possibility of parole sentence. And it was a first degree murder, attempt robbery, which hold life without sentence, uh, without the possibility of ever paroling. And I was found guilty of first degree murder and attempt robbery. In 1994, I was found guilty of it. 1991, I was arrested for it. And I had been arrested for a crime in which I knew I had never committed, which was a first degree murder and attempt robbery. I never had a gun, never knew anything about a few little perks that you needed to know to get a life without sentence. So I was in there for 28 years, and it was a struggle. It was a nightmare.
Can you tell us a little more about the crime that you was accused of?
Okay, the crime in which I was accused of, I was I was accused of committing a murder on a Caucasian lady. She was a elderly lady, 70 years old. Um, so it was sad to even know that had happened. Uh, I've been arrested before in my life. Crimes as a young man doing dumb things, experimenting and getting caught experimenting, selling stuff and stealing stuff and growing up a young man. So in this crime, it was a robbery attempt that went bad. Uh, it was a crime that should have never been even attempted. Uh, it was a crime in the Livermore, California. Um, it was the worst day of my life.
You was did you know the individual who accused you of this crime? They'll be a part of the crime.
No, I was. There was the district attorney, basically, who put the case together and figuring out the players, and in the case. It was 4 people involved in the case. So the trigger man, of course, is still locked up for this case.
So this lady, uh, there's a robbery going bad.
Robbery gone bad.
Robbery going bad. And this lady tragically ended up getting murdered
Yes, she did.
for this. Okay. And you weren't anywhere around in the vicinity of this crime.
No, I was not in the actual crime scene. I was around the corner, parked in the car, about maybe 100 yards, 150 yards away from the corner, and another like 50 yards away once you turn the corner from the actual crime scene.
Right.
So I was sitting in the car with two other people. So one guy gets out of the car and heads around the corner. So he's out of sight. No one can see exactly where he is at that moment. He disappeared around the corner. So after this happens, it was firecrackers that you can hear. And that was it. That was it. And when he got back in the car, we drove off.
So from that point, you have no knowledge of what was going on at that time.
Not at all.
You didn't know anything about her being robbed, anything.
Well, no, I knew about the robbery, which was everybody's reason for being at this particular point, knowing about a robbery. No one knew actually about a gun.
Right.
No one knew actually about no one getting shot. It
Right.
was not the actual thought process of the case. It wasn't part of it at all. It was a simple snatch and grab type case. No guns, no weapons were implemented, involved, known before the scene, before the crime, nothing, which was all stated. So no one in the car knew there was a gun except the person who had the gun. And
In which that was the trigger man.
yes, sir.
That was the trigger
That was
man.
the trigger man.
And how old were you at this time?
I was 22.
You was 22. Okay. So lady gets robbed. She get robbed. When did you find out that she was actually murdered?
Later on, I think it was the next day, and then it was on the news. So I believe the same day it was on the news, it was when I found out that she had passed. Nobody knew that she had passed. We couldn't see the scene, so we didn't know. We just heard like firecrackers. We didn't know that no one had died, and if they were shot, we didn't know. We just heard it. So.
But the trigger man,
Yes.
knew, but he didn't say what happened. He just,
Well, he gets in the car and there was questions asked what happened. There was a lot of commotion going on, so we just drove from the scene and got home, and everybody just dispersed. And that was really it. Like that, it happened so fast, So it was more sad and the reality of it when I seen it, the news, and knew it had happened then, and I couldn't believe that at that moment. That's when I had found out that there was a death in the course of that attempt robbery, and I knew where it was.
Okay. Then what happened next?
Well, what happened next was nobody said nothing. We went on about our lives. And like about 6 months after this incident happened, we were seeing on the news where they had arrested different people for, or questioned different people for this, and we were just keeping it, just never saying nothing. And about 6 months later, I was arrested for this crime, and I was arrested, detained, questioned, and I was asking for lawyers. They were, how an interrogation would go. They would tell you things about your crimes or people that was involved that weren't true to get you to try and say things about the people. So it was a hardship when I got arrested. Difficulty, definitely difficult on everybody. My life flashed before my eyes. It was difficult,
How difficult? Like, tell us in ways that it was difficult.
It was a never-ending nightmare. It was someone who was hurt, and I was connected to it through being the driver of a car, and being connected to something so horrific for the first time in my life, I didn't know how to accept it. So I knew a lot of people was hurt. It was a chain reaction of pain. It was a big impact on the family of the lady who was murdered. A lot of people loved her. A lot of people loved everyone involved in the case. So it was a big impact on people's families who were involved in it. It was a big impact on the people who, the family member of the victim. So it was the saddest moment in my life to see that happen. It impacted everybody to whereas I couldn't believe it was. I couldn't believe it until I was going back and forth to court. Yeah, it was devastating. I was numb for weeks. I was numb. I couldn't really speak about it too much. It was just a numb feeling, waking up every day in this tragic situation. So I was numb, more or less numb, and it was just a repeated nightmare.
So, was everybody that was in the car arrested?
Yes, everyone was arrested. Everyone was arrested, and they kept everybody separated. We were all going through it. I know I was never able to speak to no one and never knew what was going on, only through lawyers,
And did everybody get sentenced the same, or how did everybody get? Did you know?
They were going off like your arrest records and different things like that to see about how they were going to determine, I guess, people's sentence. At that time, I was not knowing about the system that deep, but a few people got like 15, 17 years, and one got like 6 or 12 years or something like that, and I had got life without the possibility of parole. And these were the three men that were in the car. Me and the other two guys, we had all got time for the crime, but some had got less time. And me and the trigger man, we were sentenced to life without the possibility of parole.
Right, right. So why you think that they would sentence you without parole?
They were determined to make me a bigger player in the crime than I really was. And they were looking for a conviction of this horrific crime. It was very personal to them, I believe. And back then, it was a crime of finding his. I believe it was finding everyone guilty. I'm not sure if it was to appease anyone, any family or whatnot, but I know they were really hard on convicting me for first degree murder.
So you was convicted of first degree, and the trigger man
Was convicted of first degree murder.
First degree.
Right. I was the driver of the car, so they convicted me of first degree murder, and they convicted the trigger man of first degree murder and attempt robbery.
Right.
And the other two guys who were in the car with me, they got less time. So I was always wondering, why did that happen? Why did these guys get, I was in the car with them, they got less time, and I ain't got life without the possibility of parole, when we were in the exact same boat. And the evidence do show in my case that the trigger man even told the jury that I had nothing to do with this case in 1993. Both of the other co-defendants that were in the car with me also stated I had no knowledge of the gun. And they stated that. It was fact, and it's still fact. And
Did they take a plea, the other guys, or they just went to trial?
No, the other guys took a plea, plead out, took their deal. Never been to jail. One of them never had been to jail before, so scared out of his wits, of course, facing a charge such as this.
So, 22 in California. You and four guys want to do like a
snatching
grab.
Right.
Anything go like that, somebody got murdered. Nobody knew about the gun or even a plan to murder, but the trigger man.
Exactly.
But the trigger man. And everyone testified that you did not know anything about the gun, or the plot, or even to murder this individual, this lady.
Everyone testified that I had no knowledge of the gun that was used, if it was the gun used, and they testified that I could not have seen the actual crime because I was not on the actual scene. I was in the car sitting with them. No one in the car was able to see it, so yeah.
So after everything happened, you guys communication, arguing, what's going on. You go home, and police find you guys. It's a trial. One guy got 16 years, the other guy got 15 years. The trigger man got natural life, and you got natural life.
I'm not sure of the time one guy got it. I think his time was shorter, less than.
But it was around.
Yeah. But yes, we had got life without natural life in prison.
So your mind must be everywhere at that point. Natural life. You didn't know anything about murder. know, the plot. And you went to jail. You went to prison. What prison did you go to?
When I was sentenced, I went to San Quentin in '94, in June of '94, I believe, and I stayed there. It was a reception center for the counties around the region. So Alameda County.
What year was it?
That was in '94 when I got sentenced and sent to San Quentin. And from San Quentin, I had ended up going to a prison called Calipatri in it's toward Arizona. It's toward Arizona. Yeah.
How long did you stay there?
I stayed in Calipatri for like 2.5 years.
How was that prison?
It was, the day I got there, it was a riot. It was a lot of violence. A lot of violence going on. It was really bad.
What did you see?
I was introduced to prison when I had first gotten off the bus in Calipatri. I moved into a cell, and when I moved into a cell, I was greeted by a brother, a little older than I was, and he stated where he was from, introduced himself to me, and I was told that it was a war going on at that time. This is my first day in the prison I'll be staying at. And he said he had showed me, basically how to survive in prison at that moment. So that was my introduction into prison. He was showing me how to survive because the next day was going to be our survival test. It was a war at that institution at the time when I had gotten there. So my next day of me getting to an institution, I was instantly in a war.
What was it? Gang war or what?
It was more of a racial war.
Racial war,
I believe. Yeah.
What type of violence did you see?
Oh my God! What type of violence didn't I see? I have firsthand PTSD with violence because I would know something is going to happen before the person on the yard would even know it's going to happen. So it was sad to see what was going to happen before it even happened. So I've seen a lot of stickings with homemade weapons. I've seen a lot of fights. I've seen a lot of violence, a lot of anger, a lot of death, a lot of vicious attacks.
What type of support system did you have? Did you have support from your family at that time?
My mother, which is my angel, her and my sister Lenore. Without them two, I wouldn't be here in front of you, man. And that's the honest to God truth. They held me up by every stitch to survive. And it was hard for them, and I never knew how hard it was to support me as a grown man coming through an institution with demons and beasts and violence and different things like that. So my mother and them, they was there for me, man, with no cut on it, no questions asked. It's always there for me. That was my real support system. It was two women that's real strong. My mother, Sandra, Jay Turner, man. Jay's for Jean, and my sister Lenore. She's my heart, man.
It had to be a difficult point right there, at that time. Where else did you go after that?
Well, I went to the hole And the hole is ag seg. That's where you go when you get into a fight, getting stabbed, or anything that's against policy and rules and regulations. When you violate, you go to the hole. The hole is where they strip you of all your personal properties, and you go into a room, a cell with the bare essentials, which will be a blanket and maybe a Bible and a sheet. So that's all you had when you went to the hole, so you were stripped. But
what happened? What was the circumstances for you going to
the ACSEC? Well, at this time, it was a very strict policy or program at this institution, which was Calipatria. And they were so strict. One time a guy was walking to breakfast and officers pulled him over and broke his arm, putting his hands behind his back, and he had a brother there. And things happened where it was violence jumping off. And when everyone was locked down, they came around and rounded up people saying that we were involved in different crimes against staff, and we weren't. And they sent us to AGSEG, and we were instantly removed from that institution. And I had left there in the hole and went to another institution called High Desert State Prison, which was in Susanville, Nevada. Susanville, California. So we had to drive through Nevada, and it was like a 20-hour drive from Calipatria to High Desert.
Okay, so you have a lengthy appeal process going on. Was any time that your appeal that you did get rejected and you have to file over again?
Everything I filed for 25 years got denied. Nothing was granted. It didn't matter what I filed, it was going to be denied. And I stayed filing. They just had to keep denying me. Until I got somebody who knew what ammunition to really use on them. I didn't know. I was filing what I was told, you know. So I'm fighting against people who go to school to learn how to fight the wars in court. And a young man growing up, coming through a ghetto, to fight against someone who is educated in law, it's going to be really impossible for me to win against them when I don't understand the whole language. So I had to find somebody who did understand their language, and it took me about 25 years to find him. And his name was Lee A. West. He was a consultation. He's a consultational. He gives you good counseling on everything you need to be counseled on about, especially in my case, specializing in the 1437, which was a law that came out, a case that came out where if you're not the trigger man in your case and you weren't on the scene, basically you weren't involved in the actual murder or having any knowledge of a gun, it's a mandatory release. So Mr. Lee A. West, my GOAT, as you can call him, greatest of all time. He loved Muhammad Ali, so I always use that term when I speak to him. He's my GOAT, greatest of all time. He fought the 1437 for me.
So is that your attorney?
That was my attorney. That wasn't my attorney. He was he was counseling me. Right. He does consultation work. And he's so raw with his consultation work, you would think that he was a lawyer. Um,
How did you find him?
I found him through a guy named Kenneth Moore, a guy I met in Solano State Prison. Um, he had been down for many years himself, and he had gave me Mr. Lee's, Mr. West's phone number and address, and said he specializes in appeals, and he specializes in aiding and abetting and getting you back on your cases, and he's really good. So I called him, and when I called Mr. West, I felt it from the moment I talked to him. I never looked back. I knew that he was the one that can get me up out of here by how he was conversating with me about my case.
So that case, what he specialized in, is the reason why you were exonerated for murder.
Yes, it is. He's the reason. He went in there knowing this stuff, man, and he wrote out some good things, and he gave me good things to go on, and with his help, his expertise, is the only reason why I'm sitting here in this studio today, speaking to you guys.
The other prison that you was in, the one that you did 10 years stretch. Can you tell me about that prison?
Corcoran, it was a level 4 institution where a lot of people there had life. It was for people who, it was a institution that, it was violence, of course, it was prison. It was a prison where you had, like, I learned a lot at this prison. This is the prison where I had jobs, like I worked in the law library, where I started learning about law. I worked in every job you can work in prison. So Corcoran was a prison where I learned, I started learning how to really, really, really do time. You know, to not stress on stuff and let God handle everything. That was the prison where I learned, you know, it was a little smoother than a lot of other prisons because I didn't get in trouble for a long stretch at that institution. So it was a smooth institution to be at that time for me, you know, for not getting in trouble for a nice stretch. My earlier years, it was a lot of trouble, you know.
So at that point, when you went there, how long what you were into your sentence?
I had gotten to Corcoran in 2000, and I had been in there since 1994. So 6 years is how long it took to get to Corcoran, and I stayed there for like 10 years. Yeah, it was you know, it was prison. It was riots. It was fights. It was stabbings. It was lockdowns. It was everything that you would hear about prisons. It was police brutality. And you know, it was really, really difficult, man, when it come down to the mind game. It was real slavery, real slavery. Yeah, people always out. I see people on my own family as well fighting slavery on the street, but I was actually living slavery, and you fighting for it, but I'm living it. So I couldn't understand how nobody fought for us living it, you know. So those were the years when I was thinking stuff like that. I wrote a lot, you know. So writing was my passion.
What did you write?
I wrote everything. I wrote down poems. I wrote down situations that happened that day at the institution. It may have been a fight. It may have been somebody gotten stabbed. It may have been somebody died on the basketball court. It may have been, it was a good day. It may have been a holiday, a Christmas, and nobody was fighting. Everybody was happy. I write about everything. There's no limit to what I write. You know, I write about my true realities, living in there lonely with no, uh, just not a lot of family. I write about being in there lonely, just being in the cell by yourself, man. And I write about the incidents with guards. I write about things I see on TV with police brutality, killing young men, unarmed men, black men. Um, I write about everything under the sun. I like writing poetry. Uh, I like writing movies. Uh, it became my passion because it was the thing that I can do the most at that moment. You couldn't go outside. You couldn't drive cars. You couldn't play basketball when you wanted to. You couldn't do a lot of things when you wanted to in there. So my escape was writing. I dreamed a lot. So, that's what I did.
Right. And you was there for 10 years. When, right before you left that prison, how many times have your appeal been denied?
I would have to check the records. It's been so denied so many times, I stopped counting. They just would not let me be right with nothing, and they see it was wrong from the gate, and I was crying. It just
That must be really depressing for you at that time.
I felt for the first time what it felt like to lose everything. Everything. Um, I lost everything, man. I was real depressed because I was loved a lot on the street. So when I went to prison, I thought it'd be a lot of people around supporting, and there was really no support. So depression was an everyday, always thing. You never stop thinking about family, friends. You never stop thinking of all the memories you have because that's all you have is memories. So to be in there with nothing, you feel empty. It's the loneliest place on earth. Really, it's the loneliest place on earth.
Who at that point, who were your support system at that point?
It was my mother and my sister. Always, always, from beginning to end, and they still there to this day. Always supporting, always there for if I needed stamps, if I needed envelopes, if I needed paper, a typewriter, if I needed a package, if I needed tennis shoes, the new ones that just came out, if I needed cosmetics, soap, deodorant, just simple things, but it was things that I needed that I wouldn't have been able to obtain if it wasn't for them sharing their retirement money, so their Social Security money, disability money, when they worked, their work, so yeah.
So you did 10 years there. Where was the next prison that you went to?
I went from Corcoran to Um, I went from Corcoran to Pelican Bay. I went from Corcoran to um, Solano State Prison and then to Pelican Bay. I went to Solano. And
How was Solano?
Solano was a lower level. I went from a level 4 to a level 3. So you have a lot more freedom there. Freedom meaning that you have more yard time. You have more access to moving around a lot more. You have a lot more program. You have a lot more yard. You can play sports, basketball tournaments, football tournaments. So you have a lot more freedom in that sense of freedom. You still in prison because we weren't playing basketball and, all the time in the level 4s due to lockdowns and riots and violence that was going on. So when we got to Solano, it was still violence and stuff going on, but it was a little bit minimized to of what I was used to because of the levels. So it was a difference because that was my first time being in that low level. I was always in level 4, so I had to change. I had to transform from that real violent to less violent environment.
So that's 16 years after your incarceration. Appeals constantly still get denied. Still facing a natural life sentence. Are you around other inmates with natural life sentences also, violent crimes, or?
I was around violent people the first day I made it to Santa Rita County Jail. That's what it is. It's the devil's garbage can. Institutions, prisons, county jails, mental institutions. It's the devil's garbage can. You're only going to see violent people. You're only going to see people with murders and robberies and different things. It's the garbage can is where you throw all your trash away. So it's a variety of trash, and that's how they depict prison. It's a variety of criminals and a variety of crimes. So they just throw us all in one big bag, and it's just the garbage can of society. So yeah, you see violence all the time, just everywhere.
How long were you there?
Dude, I was in Solano for like maybe 3.5, almost 4 years, something like that.
Then you moved to Pelican Bay.
That's when I went to Pelican Bay, and I did my remaining time at Pelican Bay. I had started fighting my appeal, the one that won. I started fighting that in 2015, I believe. I believe I started fighting the case in 2015 or 14 on the appeal that actually got me relief. So I was in Solano when that started. That was when I had met with the brother Kenny Moore, and he gave me the flyer with Mr. Lee West's address on it. So yeah, and then I headed up to Pelican Bay, man, and I was still fighting it all the way through. It was some denials when we first started.
How was Pelican Bay?
Pelican Bay was the worst prison I've ever been to. It was the worst prison I've ever been to because you knew you were in prison when you went to Pelican Bay, meaning you didn't get absolutely nothing. You far away from society. Pelican Bay is the furthest prison in California away from anywhere. Pelican Bay is up by Oregon. Um, so if you ever look up Pelican Bay on any on the YouTube or anything, you will see nothing but violence the whole time that been established. So it was really rough, man. Disrespect from the staff. Living conditions was horrible. Um, it was the worst prison I've been to.
Were you in any altercations, fights, or had you do any? Had you had to defend yourself or anything?
Yes, in my time in prison, I've been in fights. I've had to defend myself on numerous occasions. In riots, you don't have a choice. It was some of the scariest times of my life. Even if you know how to fight, even if you have the heart of a lion, even if you are a real beast, you still be scared, nervous in those situations. So it was many nights where I'm scared, many days where I was scared, but I had to stand strong regardless, because it wasn't nowhere to run to. It was a Thunderdome, an arena for bestiality. So,
So, Pelican Bay is the worst prison that you in. How long were you in Pelican Bay?
I was only in Pelican Bay almost like a year and a half before I was sent back to San Quentin to finish fighting this case to be released. That was my last prison I went to.
So, in Pelican Bay, you find out. How did you find out the direction of your appeal when you think about where it may be, some light in it? When did you find out?
I found out I was going home 14 days before I was released. I didn't know anything. I was still fighting my case, man. I was waiting on the courts to give me a judgment, and I've waited on that for many years, so I've never gotten a judgment in my favor ever. So I was feeling good about this judgment only because I had professional consultation. Um, Lee West was very professional in his counseling. And yeah, that's when I got the relief. 14 days before I was released, I learned that I was going home, and my case had gotten reversed. They were dropping the gun charge because I had no knowledge of it, and they were dropping the murder because I had no participation in the murder at all. So that's when I learned of it, and I had learned of it through. It was an officer. It was an officer came to my door to pass out mail. It was mail call, and he came to my door and said, "Taylor, you have mail," and it was regular mail, no legal mail. And he said, "I got a call that you will be transpacking tomorrow because you're going back to court Friday." So I got on the phone and called my lawyer, "Hey, what's going on?" And he had told me, he said, "Yeah, you heard the good news." I said, "Yeah, I heard that I was going to court." And he said, "Yeah, you getting your case has been overturned, man. They're dropping the gun and they're dropping the murder, and that's time served. You'll be going home. And when I learned of that, I was numb because I was given something that I never thought that I would receive, so I didn't know how to receive it, you know. So I was numb, man, just numb at that moment.
At that time, how old were you at that time?
When I found out I was going home, I was 51 years old.
What year was that?
I was in 2019. And I was 22 when I got locked up for first degree murder.
And how many years did you? That was 28 years.
That was 28 long years, man.
28 years.
28 years. Yeah. It was a long time, man. It took a long time to get there, but
So what month were you released?
The day I got released out of prison was July 3rd, 2019. About 9:20 in the morning. Yeah, it was the best day.
What was going on through your head? Like, was it like surreal?
Yes, it was surreal. Because, I mean, until I was actually in a car or going over a freeway or a bridge, you know, you don't believe you're free until you actually out of prison, especially being there for the length of time that I was there. So until I was out, I didn't believe it. Yeah, so when I did get out, my mother picked me up. And I come out there and look, and it was the best sight I've ever seen. I seen my mother. She was just sitting there, you know, just hugged me. You know, we just hugged, and I'm looking around, and I'm still too close to prison. You know, so I say, it's time to go. Let's get a little further away from here first. You know, so we drove on and went across the bridge, man, from San Quentin. I got released from San Quentin prison. And we drove across the Richmond Bridge, man. It was the best drive across the bridge I ever had, you know. Yeah, that's how I got released. And until I got on the other side of the bridge and I kept looking in that rearview mirror, making sure they wasn't coming, man. That's when I knew I was free. I was with my mother, man. I feel safe there, you know. Yeah. And she took me home.
And what happened at the first day home?
The first day I came home, I didn't do nothing, man. I just came in the house. You know, I drove home and went and got something to eat. I said I wanted a home cooked meal when I got home. But going across that bridge, I saw the McDonald arches, man, and I be seeing them commercials, you know. So we pulled on over and got something from McDonald's, man. So just something simple, because she had food that she was cooking, you know. So since everybody wasn't there, I couldn't touch none of the food at home until everybody came the next day. So I got to smell all this barbecue, macaroni and cheese, sweet potatoes, greens, cake. Oh my goodness. So I had to smell all this to the next day. So the next day is when I had my real feast, man. You know, yeah, it was the day I was just looking around, just amazed that I was sitting on a couch with cushion. I was, you know, rubbing my feet on some carpet. I was seeing color. I was, you know, eating food with real sugar in it, you know, just real seasoning. And it was the best time of my life, man. Yeah.
How has the world changed since you was incarcerated? That was 94.
I left in '91.
Yeah, 90.
So when I left, it was different, man. You know, I didn't expect it to be the same, but when I came home, the biggest change for me that just grabbed me by the heart was homelessness. Um, I didn't see that when I was home, and it's so big now. Um, that was a big change. Everybody is in a faster rush right now to get wherever they're going. That's the way the world's turning. So I am not trying to catch up. I'm just trying to survive it. you know, with the technology world today. So a lot changed, man, with the people. Uh, you don't see happiness in people's eyes no more. You don't see a lot of friendliness in people's eyes no more. You just see uh, plain nothing. It's just sadness, man, to see people. I walk by people, I speak to everybody, how you doing? And they just walk right by you. It's like, it's not as a happy world as it used to be.
So, you have an an experience. You know, you lived a journey. I'm sure like a self-reflecting journey also. Uh,
It was a life reflecting. Now, everything I've ever done in life, I reflected on it when I was home. I reflected on it when I was locked up, man, and I had to look at everything that I've ever done as a kid, everything I've ever done, criminally, good, bad, whatever. So I had enough time to just reflect on everything I've ever did, man. So it made me be way better than what I was when I first went in. I had to be. I had to grow up in prison. I was 22 years. I lived on the street and lived in prison for 28. So that was my home. So I had to learn on my own things. It was like a rogue. A rogue is someone who um, they're in the streets by themselves. They have to grit and grind for themselves. If they want to eat, they have to go get it. If they want to, and it's like living on the streets. So I had to live like a rogue in prison. You can't trust nobody in those situations. You can't. All you have is yourself, man. So, um, you know, I rode through my journey, learning every single day. Every day I learned about variety of things. I learned what I could take physically. I learned what I could take through being slaved in that slave mentality, because they strip you of all your nutrients when you're in prison. They strip you of everything you love. They only give you everything that you hate. So I had to learn, man, how to balance my anger. I had to learn how to deal with many criminal personalities. Uh, so yeah, my whole journey was a college in session. I was learning every single day about life, man, and I was learning not only from prison, learning things inside. I was also learning this stuff on the outside, because I was really in tune to it. I had time to really watch it and dissect the things going on the street and the things that I was living. So I learned every single day about different stuff, man, and I was sucking it up to be a human encyclopedia. So I stayed really busy trying to better myself because I saw so much failure in prison. I had to succeed. There was no way I was going to be a failure. If God ever gave me a chance to come home, I would never fail. And I promised that I wouldn't. So now I'm home, and I promise I'm keeping my promise to me. I would never fail again. And I felt that was the lowest moment in my life. I let down everybody I knew just being a part of it. I let everybody down, being arrested, man, having my face flashed on the news, with the headline of a murder, so it was painful in that, so I had to regain my strength, man. That would knock the patch out of me. That knocked all the wind out of me right there. So I had to learn on my own, man, the mental health part of it. You know what I'm saying? You had to keep your mind focused and strong. You had to read a lot. You had to, because you can lose your mind with that much pressure on you, not knowing if you're ever coming home. So,
So, do you have any words of wisdom for kids, black men, or men of color, or anybody that's going down that wrong path that may be watching right now?
it's hard teaching young men, but it can be done. So if you out there listening and I'm not your OG homeboy, if you doing whatever it is you're doing out there on the streets, if you are living the life that you living and it's not right, you know right from wrong. Only thing I could tell you is prison is designed for the crime you're into. It will get you into a web like a spider and you will never get out of that web. If you want to live the rest of your life in institution style living where you're not in control of nothing, it's the perfect place to be. If you want to live human, if you want to live free, if you want to be productive out here working, it's very possible. I'm a living testimony of that. I came home and haven't looked back since. I'm gonna work until my fingers fall off. But I tell the young men to have somebody positive around you, because if you don't, you're not gonna go far in life. You have to have somebody around you that's positive, that you listen to, and that you will show in your actions that you listen. Young men doing crime, man, it's like they have no filter. And no filter meaning they have no bottom to the limits that they'll go to with their crime. So I just pray for them, man. Only God can save the inevitable, man. Things that's out there right now and all the things that's been happening since I've been gone, man. It's unbelievable, man, how much we tear each other down. It's unbelievable. So we need to just, violence, bro. If we can just stop violence, life will change. This whole world is just revolves around violence, man. It was built on violence, and it's gonna be violence. But I know if I can come home and not be a part of it, so can other people, man. It's a lot of life to live out here, good life, man. A lot of jobs, a lot of things to do out here, man, in life, So I would just say for the young men, if you want to do something in your life, do it positive. You don't have to be negative in your life, man. You don't have to do crime. You don't have to be hip. You don't have to, carry guns. You don't have to do all that. Peer pressure is something else. Yeah. So for the young men in this world right now, If you can find peace in yourself, if you can find love in your heart, if you can find God, I would prescribe that. You know, I would prescribe that. That's how I found a lot of peace talking to guys we would call OGs. You know, OGs is somebody who been through what I've been through, and that's the same struggle. And they are older. They've been through the wars, the gangs. They've been through the riots. They've been through selling drugs. They've been through being hurt and shot at and stabbed. They've been through the streets. They've been through the struggles. They've seen it all. And now they called OGs because they old gangsters. They done been through what we've been through. So now I'm learning from them what to and not to do, because that's who I looked up to. That's who I was designed around to be sitting around a lot, you know, watching them do what they do. So they were the ones who I idolized, and then later on they were the ones who taught me what not to do and get me back on the straight and narrow. So I respect the OGs, man. Not to say that they were guiding you into more trouble. You was already in trouble, headed in the deeper troubles, and they was just either guiding you in a path to do it right, or they was guiding you in a path to you know, stay out of trouble and do things like that. So I learned a lot from a lot of my OGs, you know. So the youngsters need people. The youngsters, you know, they need people to just take time out for them if they would, you know, give us the common courtesy to invite us into their world, because it's hard getting invited into a young man's world right now. You would really have to understand them. So it's hard to teach what you can't get into, you know, with these young men today. It's just hard.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes, sir.
thank you for being so candid with us today and telling us your journey.
And I appreciate you guys having me, listening to me, interested in what I have to say. I appreciate you letting me speak on this piece right here of what I've been through. I appreciate God giving me this opportunity to be in front of you guys, man. And I really admire what you do, helping people like me in my situation be able to express a little peace. Yeah, I can't express 28 years in one session, but I could express pieces of it, you know. And I thank you guys for letting me have this stage right here.